second Ask the Betrayed. I'm Sharon,
And I'm Ray.
and we are here to offer some education, some guidance, and some advocacy.
Hmm. What do you
I,
mean by advocacy?
I feel like that's one of our jobs is to advocate for women and men who have been put in a position where they are, and I'm going to use words of a beloved client, trapped
Hmm.
by someone else's bad behavior. What do you think? It's
You know,
what it feels like.
I can relate. I can absolutely relate. And it's interesting because the place I hate the word trapped, to be honest. Like it brings up that claustrophobic, don't back me into a corner feeling that frankly I don't like. And I would be very happy to never feel again. So I probably have a very visceral reaction to that word, but yes. I mean, to wake up and find out that life is different than everything you've intended and designed and constructed it to be, and to feel like you've lost all of your compass points and all of your options and all of your voice. So when you say advocate, that's what I think of is adding my voice, advocate to the needs and the well-being of our clients and of ourselves and one another.
Of our world.
Right.
So we talked about AppSats last week,
Good.
and the AppSats model is based on Herman,
Dr. Judith Herman.
Dr. Judith Herman, and the three primary areas of focus in the phases of trauma work.
Hmm.
Right. So the first one is safety. We like to say safety and stabilization. The second one is,
Remembrance and mourning.
yes, that
And
one.
I like to call that the contextualization stage. Where
Yes,
does all this fit in the context of everything else happening in my life and in my world?
yes. The reality. What is reality? What is the truth of my life? And
And
then,
what does it mean?
and
Yeah.
how do I use it?
Yeah.
And the third is reconnecting.
Hmm.
We often call that post-traumatic growth,
Hmm.
which is frankly my favorite area to work in
Yeah.
because it's risky.
Hmm.
It's risky to get to the place where you're like, okay, I've figured out how I'm going to be safe in my new reality.
Hmm.
And safety isn't the ultimate goal. And I think for so many of us at the beginning of the journey, it is. It feels like that's the ultimate goal. I need to feel safe, right?
Hmm. I
Um,
need to get untrapped.
I need to get untrapped. And ultimately, the goal is to live.
Mm.
And living doesn't happen in a shutdown state. And too much safety can create a shutdown.
Hmm. And it kind of on the opposite end of that spectrum of trauma recovery, it's kind of the opposite of the connection or the reconnection that becomes that more ultimate goal. And I think I need to say this involves reconnecting oftentimes with a partner or other people and persons around us, but it also has a whole lot to do with reconnecting with our best selves.
Yes, that has to happen. Or
Mhm.
you can't show up for reconnection with other people.
Mhm. But doesn't it ever strike you as interesting how often our clients come to us really focused on wanting to repair that relationship? And sometimes it becomes our task and our gift, our opportunity to invite them to broaden that perspective on what reconnection after trauma really means.
Mm, that's such a great thought. Yes. I think that we're raised, especially as women, to think of our lives in the container of family.
Yeah.
And we want happy, healthy, reconnected families. But if we have sacrificed ourselves, our identity, our authenticity, in order to live in a marriage, in a family of unfaithfulness,
Mhm.
and all that goes with that, it makes perfect sense that we must reconnect with ourselves. And we have to do that in every one of these three phases.
Yeah, yeah. So, we always like to think of one, two, and three kind of as sequential numbers. But what we talk about when it comes to trauma recovery is that we're usually bridging multiple ones of those stages at a time. It can be helpful to identify some of the cues that indicate that we might be primarily working in that safety and stability seeking stage, in that processing, remembering, and mourning stage, or moving into that more post-traumatic growth oriented reconnection stage, because there are things that are specific and highlighted within each one of them, even though we do a lot of jumping back and forth, it seems.
So I'm going to let you run with that.
Yeah. Okay. So when we first discover that unfaithfulness, and it is often the catalyst, the thing that cracks everything wide open and helps us see things differently than we may have seen them before the discovery, right? That idea of stopping the hemorrhage, managing the crisis, stopping everything from spinning out of control. That becomes first order of business stuff. It's the survival mode, wherein everything else feels kind of secondary or relatively luxurious, because all we're really deeply focused on is managing that crisis.
I know that one of the big questions that we often get in early stages of betrayal trauma recovery is how long does this take? And
Yeah.
I wish, like, I have my magic wand, right? I wish that we could say it's going to take you a month. It's going to take you 3 months. It's going to take you what it takes you.
Hmm. Yeah.
And it's hard to formulate a plan when you don't know how long it's going to take, what the goalposts are. So let's talk about some of the feelings that are happening in that first stage and some of the ways that we know we're mastering it.
I think you already mentioned that sense of feeling trapped,
Yes.
that feeling of I'm voiceless and I'm choiceless. There's often a sense of either panic, like I gotta fix this, or of shutdown, I can't handle this. And sometimes it's some of both,
Right.
or the two rapid cycle between each other.
Sometimes it's just this sense of lostness.
Mm,
I remember feeling so lost,
mhm.
being a confident woman. I had spent my life making goals, working toward them, and to find that my life was not what I thought it was, you feel powerless. I think that one of the most important things in this stage is the beginning to look inside. How can you, even though your world is rocking everywhere, how can you begin to look inside to reclaim what you already have, what you didn't know you had, which you didn't know you needed, which you gave away to somebody else?
Yeah. Yeah. And when I think of that need for stability, I think of both internal and external resourcing. What's inside of me that I can dig deep down and grasp onto to help me through this? And what are the external resources to whom I can ask and reach out for help and say, I can't do this alone. I need some reinforcement as I'm seeking to stabilize my life during this crisis.
That is the definition of felt safety.
Hmm.
The internal work is a little more complicated. The external work, we can talk about resources for that.
Mhm.
So finding, I'm going to say somebody that is trained in upsets, finding someone who specializes in betrayal trauma, finding not just a therapist or a coach, but also finding a community is so
Mhm.
important.
Yeah. Some of Judith Herman's research really emphasized how critically important group support is for survivors of relational trauma. And then when Barbara Steffens did her research that built upon that, we realized how much having other people hear our story and feel those feelings along with us dissipates some of the shame.
Mhm.
And there's an instant sense of I am not the only human being surviving or having survived this crisis. And if someone else can do it, maybe I can find it within me to do the same. So, yeah, those external resources are professional, but they're also peer-based.
Yes. The idea of taking the cry, see me.
Hmm.
So in our early reckoning of discovery, I find that that's the cry that I hear the most from our clients is see me in this mess, see me in what I brought to the table and was loyal to and honored, and see me as I fall apart so that you can know all of me. I also know from doing a lot of developmental trauma work with clients is that see me is a human need. So if you can find people who, when you feel that need to be seen, can see you in all your different sort of modes of being, in crisis, out of crisis, then you're doing what you need to do
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
safety and stability.
Yeah. One of the things I remember feeling this deep sense of awe about when I first watched you and James in your roles doing intensive therapy is watching you put up on this big whiteboard a timeline of life events, including all of the micro traumas and all of the major traumas and all of the developmental traumas, all of those needs to be seen that were unmet or were met harshly or were met dismissively or were underplayed or shamed. And there's something about that feeling seen, sometimes visually on a board in front of you, that makes all the difference and stuff starts to make sense in a way where it only felt crazy and chaotic before. And that sense, coming to believe there's some sense to what's happening or some sequence to what's happening, it helps a lot with the confusion factor.
Mhm. Mhm. So if we think about needs in that first phase of betrayal trauma work, that need to be seen for who you are, how do you go about that? How do you make that happen? I love being a member of APSATS because we all work as this giant team. And we talked about last week how we often refer between each other. We know that there are people that are really good at this and really good at that. And so we try to offer opportunities for our clients to be seen for who they are collectively, but also who they are individually. I also think that telling the truth in that first phase is so important. So it's not just telling the truth of this is what my life is, but telling the truth about who I am in the wake of this huge discovery and trauma, but also who I've been trying to be, who I wish to be. I think about the folks that were in my life in the beginning and some of the help that I had available to me was not helpful. And I think about the most helpful, the folks who said, what do you need to be able to sleep at night? What do you need to be able to eat again? How can we help you get from day to day? Being in this profession, I think you and I both know that we are surrounded by really smart, empathetic people.
Empathy.
What a blessing that has been. And if you don't have that in your life, go find it.
Mhm.
Those people who are willing to just sit with you, even when they don't have words, even if they don't have any understanding, even if they don't know the whole story.
Mhm.
So back to community.
You mentioned things like eating and sleeping and breathing and moving and hydration. Those are some of those body-based interventions that every single human being on the planet already knows how to do for trauma, and sometimes simply need reminders of how valuable they are and what a big impact they make, especially when our bodies absorb the traumatic impact of what's happening to us. Those are some of our most frequent symptoms that we hear is dysregulated sleep, dysregulated eating, dysregulated hydration, all of the things.
Mhm. I think about how there was this fight going on inside of me about how I felt like my life had stopped and how could the world still be continuing at the same time? And I didn't really know how to help myself with that juxtaposition of I have come to a dead stop because I don't know who I am and I don't know what ground is safe to walk on. And the world is whizzing by. My children's lives are continuing. The world keeps marching forward. And I remember one of the pieces of advice that I got was slow down.
Mhm. Did it piss you off?
Oh, A, I can't even move.
Yeah.
And B, slow down what? Like
Yeah.
everything is imploded. How do you slow down? Slowing down for me was this active pursuit of slowing my mind down, slowing my actions down, slowing my reactions down, slowing my sass down. Because, boy, mm,
Mhm.
taking each moment
Mhm.
and beginning to think about what is healthy for me. It's not a question that we ask a lot as women in this world. What is healthy for me?
Mhm. Yeah.
What was most healthy for you? What did you find yourself reaching for?
See, my mind always splits to the very beginning and then when everything fell apart again. So sometimes when you say things like that, my mind doesn't know which direction to go. I found myself reaching for self-soothing in many ways. I found myself looking for comfort that would cut through the pain and the overwhelm. I felt a deep need to be understood, which I think is very adjacent to that need to be seen that you were
Mhm.
talking about. But to have someone not just see what was happening to me, but care enough to be a part of the process of addressing it.
I remember your big cozy taupe blanket. And I remember the first time I saw it, and I was like, oh, I want a blanket like that. And
Yeah.
I don't know, 14, 15 different attempts. They were
Mhm.
never
Mhm.
like your cozy
Yeah.
blanket.
Yeah. But that's one of the things I know that we talk about a lot with clients is when you're not sure what you're needing and you're wanting, and you're not sure what will make it feel better. Tuning into your senses can be a place to start. I always say it gives us a little bit of traction. So, what do we want to look at that might bring us some sense of either joy or peace? What do we want to feel either in our bodies or on our bodies? Or what do we want to smell? What do we want to taste? What do we want to breathe? What do we want to hear? It's a way to get present and take that crazy, chaotic, tortured trauma brain and tell it what to do,
Mhm.
even for a moment.
Mhm. Mhm. One of my favorite ways was having ringtones on my phone. And so James had particular ringtones. And one of them was the formerly known Dixie Chicks. So the Chicks is what they're called now. And it was, I need a man like that, like a hole in my head. And so every time he called, I would hear that. And it would make me chuckle, even though life was so cruddy. So for me, comfort was finding some humor.
Nice.
Mhm. I think also safety can be sourced in the idea that we're going to survive it. We might not know what it's going to look like.
Mhm.
We might not know which choice at the end we're going to make or is going to be made for us. But knowing that we're going to survive it. And I remember that one of the things that I said to myself over and over and over was, you've got this.
Yeah. I know we'll dig into this a little bit more when we're talking about loss, grief, and mourning, that remembrance and mourning stage two piece of all of this. But I remember hearing for the first time that our emotions aren't caves. We're not going to get stuck in the emotional trauma. And we could have a whole conversation just about that concept of feeling stuck, couldn't we? But our emotions are tunnels. There's an outlet on the other end. Our experiences, we will get through them. I remember one of the anchor statements that I needed so badly at various points was the only way out is through. I had this image of I could stop, I could throw up my hands, I could have a meltdown, I could kick and scream, I could just quit, but I would be quitting in the middle and I wouldn't get the rest of the way through the thing that I couldn't tolerate. And so that idea of the only way out is through really kept me going on hard days.
Mhm. I often think about movement when I think about as we are traveling this. And most people think of just us walking from one point to another. But there are some really great hand gestures that are somatically called for in order to help us in this sort of beginning, middle, and end stage. And one of them is this stop, the pushing away of unwanted things. It's also sort of a clearing, like I'm going to clear my way from one end of this tunnel to the other. I'm going to get from here to there.
Even if I have to dig my way through it a little bit.
Mhm. Being able to sleep all night was a milestone
Mhm.
that I fought hard for. Really being okay with how I felt in any given moment.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So many of the feelings were so scary. And the fear is that you're going to get stuck in them. The thing we know about life is that it keeps changing.
So that capacity to be attuned and to acknowledge and to accept and to engage the authentic emotions present in any given moment is a skill that assists us even beyond the crisis of trauma, the crisis of unfaithfulness, or the crisis of relational ruptures, because life is hard and life does change. That pivot, that capacity to be real and authentic in this moment, regardless of what the next moment brings, matters. I love it when I'll get that question sometimes from clients, what am I supposed to do? How should I show up in this conversation? What should I say in this situation? And it's especially interesting when those emotions are very contradictory, right? Like you called them scary. My big recollection of is they were ambivalent. They were strong feelings in contradictory directions in many ways. I love him. I hate him. Come here, get away. I need you. I can't stand you. All of those different things. And so I remember the moment when the answer became super clear. I had one job, one clear directive, and that was to be honest and authentic in any given moment. That was a really easy to follow
Mm.
invitation.
Hard to
Even,
practice.
yeah, yeah.
Simple idea, hard to practice. But really, what healing is all about is that practice.
Mhm.
That practice of us saying, I feel this, it makes me think this, causes me to do this. The outcome is this. I want the outcome to be that.
Mhm.
How am I going to make that happen? I remember a story about, oh, it was really, really early. And I remember James coming to visit, and he walked in the door, and I was absolutely in that ambivalent, I love you, I hate you. You are the only one that can help me, and you are the one that has hurt me the most place. And so he walks in the door and he kisses me on the forehead, and I projectile vomit everywhere. That was such a physical reaction to what was happening inside of me. You don't love me. Why are you kissing me in this most vulnerable, precious place
Mhm.
after what you've done to me? And I was almost like the exorcist.
Mhm.
Needless to say, he left.
So, what was your body telling you in that moment?
Can't tolerate what has hurt me. I wanted him to fix me. I wanted him to rescue me. I was the only one that could do it. But shoot, if he was offering, I might as well give it a try. My body said, oh no, sister, it's not going to work that way.
Yeah.
I don't know how long it was until I saw him again after that. I can't
Wow.
really piece that part together, but I just remember that moment and my body just saying no,
Mhm.
because our body always is telling us the truth. Our trauma brain, boy, she can tell us some great lies. If only I can have his arms around me. If only he's willing to show up for me, I
Mm.
will feel safe again. Nope. So safety's important. We're going to find it. I think prayers was always on the top of my list
Mm.
about that safety too. I prayed a lot. I remember conversations with God, not just praying in the sense of, please help me through this or give me some clarity, but okay, this is what is in front of me. This is what my life is right now. How are we going to figure this out? How are we going to get from here?
How'd you get your answers?
Oh gosh, you and the tricky questions today, huh? By being quiet, which is not always an easy choice for me.
I was going to say, I know you well enough to know that that wouldn't be your immediate go-to
No,
under most circumstances.
but I wrote a lot. And one of the things that James says to partners, which I love, is your brain is going like this. We need to
Mhm.
make it linear, right? So one of the easiest ways to do that is to write. And I wrote and I wrote and I wrote. And journaling was not something that would have been a safe thing for me to do as a little girl. I had two older sisters. They would have read absolutely everything in it. I would have never been able to hide it from my mother because she cleaned everything. But I learned to journal. And I think a lot of my conversations with God were in that journal. And I had friends who could show up for me no matter how I was showing up.
It's important.
I think one of the things that I still struggle with as a healing woman, which isn't necessarily betrayal trauma related, although it is a part of it, is letting people see me not okay.
Mhm.
Like, ooh, my eyes fill up. The idea of someone seeing me in a vulnerable state. But boy, my friend Kate, I could show up at her house and I would just call and say, I'm coming. And I could show up at her house and she would ride or die with me. Like, we could throw eggs, we could make all kinds of different choices. It didn't matter how I showed up.
Mhm.
She was there with open arms to receive me. What an important lesson and a healing lesson for all of us that I had the opportunity to learn early in this
Mhm.
idea of safety and stabilization.
So, what would you say to people who are hearing that and off the top of their head, they feel too alone to be that vulnerable? Maybe they don't have that ride or die friend right at the top of the list of contacts. Where do they go? What do they do?
Well, that's where that community creating activity comes in. So they can go online and look for places that offer support for those who are going through betrayal trauma. You can Google ABSATs and find a specialist, find someone in your community. Most of us in ABSATs know the power of that group, that necessity for group, which is so important. We can certainly go to our church, although lots of us have faced controversy in how the church chooses to help us. And often the community within the church can be supportive. I love the idea of using our active imagination
Mm.
to have the conversations that we need to. Some of you may know that I'm a play therapist, and the things that heal children heal us too as adults. And so for us to choose to act out what we need to happen in our lives can make it so.
Mm.
So I used to have the craziest conversations.
Hearing you say that makes me think of how children can connect and engage even if they don't know each other.
Mm.
That classic meet on the playground and suddenly you're fast friends dynamic. I see that happening in partners who connect as strangers and develop that ride or die relationship that didn't exist and may not have ever existed had they not met with the shared experience of infidelity, betrayal trauma.
Do you remember one of our group participants who said, I love every one of you, and I don't even know your last name?
It's true. That's true.
Mhm. I think about the relationships that were formed or that are formed in the groups that we run, and how sometimes for the first time you are allowing people to see you for who you really are
Mm,
in that context.
yeah. I love that moment that happens when someone shows up in group and says they're fine. And 10 minutes later, they're very much not fine. But somewhere in that 10 minutes, they got present with themselves and they got present with each other. And they were brave enough to be vulnerable enough to open their mouths and let who knows what come out and experience that opportunity to be seen and to be addressed and to be acknowledged and to be validated and to be supported. That's those external resources that can be so helpful. Yeah.
If you are feeling isolated and you need to find some place to be seen, to be heard, to have someone collaborate with you in your best interest to help you move through all three stages, what do you look for?
It's a really great question. You were talking earlier about our bodies, and our bodies always tell the truth. I found even when I was at my most scared and I was at my most ambivalent and I was at my most confused, I could trust myself. Now, it was scary to believe that was possible, but when I walked into a group and it felt like a vibe that I wasn't wanting for my life, when I encountered conversations that were more focused on the trauma than on healing from the trauma, when I encountered support environments that felt more focused on labeling and categorizing and vilifying my partner, my body told me so. I didn't feel supported in the trajectory of healing.
You know what they call those in the South, don't you?
Now tell me.
Bitch and bakes.
I learned something new from you every single day. But I think that when we encounter an environment, when we're brave enough to look and see what's out there, when we're brave enough, even in our vulnerability and our fragility, to say, hey, I'm going to listen to this podcast, or I'm going to look up this group, or I'm going to check out this webinar, whatever the case may be, that increases our chances of finding our sacred space, the one that's a good and right fit. So, as scary as it is and exhausted as we tend to feel, I always say, keep looking until you find it. Because if you haven't found it, it's not because it's not out there. It's because you haven't crossed paths with it yet.
Okay. I like that. I like that. I remember the group that I was in for that whole first year, and I didn't believe in a lot of what was being said, the sort of theory of it.
Mhm,
Yet I believed in the women
mhm,
that had gotten better,
mhm.
and I believed in the safety of having a place where I could be like everyone else. So, absolutely, listen to yourself, find what feels right in your body, not necessarily what you think it should be. And next time, we'll talk some more about the stages of remembrance and mourning and the post traumatic growth.
Which I think is perfect because I know you love the post-traumatic growth stage, and I'm kind of a sucker for the loss, grief, and mourning part. So we'll get through it all together.
All right, I'll see you next week.
All right.
And don't forget, if you like what you've seen, to give us a thumbs up. Please comment if you want. If you want to email us, I don't remember the email address.
AskTheBetrayed@gmail.com.
And remember that we can't do therapy over email, and we will read what you send to us.
Feedback and ideas, questions. What do you want to talk about? Because we can come up with in our heads what we think people want to hear, but we want to be having the conversations that all of our listeners want to be having too.
Don't forget to watch Ask the Unfaithful on the weeks that we're not with you. Hey, see you next time.
Bye bye.